Okay, it's 1903, so I think we'll carry on admitting people, but we'll make a start. We'll make a start. So, welcome everybody. Welcome to the ATF webinar on axes and other things. So it's you're all very welcome to join us tonight. I'm Richard Powell. I'm chair of the Ancient Tree Forum. Welcome to you all. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight, and thanks for all those who have made donations to with your on your ticket price, as it were. Much appreciated. That work and that money is vital for helping us do our work, and crucial to the support of the work of the ATF. Working for ancient trees and veteran trees for future generations. So thank you very much for that. If you wished, you could add value by clicking on the grant aid form, which allows us to take some money from the government rather than you, which is always even more helpful. So thank you very much for all that. And hopefully it will be a fascinating discussion and evening. So without further ado, I'll hand over to your host for this evening. I'll come back towards the end, but your host for this morning, can't think of anybody more qualified to take us through this whole next section, and that's Dr. Helen Reed, who's our technical and engagement officer at ATF. So Helen, over to you to talk to to us about your colleagues and acting and the work that you've done throughout Europe. So Helen, over to you.
Thank you, Richard. Just as a way of introduction, the sort of germ of this webinar started in 2004, really, when I did a church fellowship visiting Spain and other countries looking for pollards and pollarding. And in the Basque Country, I met Miguel Murray, who hopefully we'll hear from later on, and his father, who helped me and showed me around their wonderful trees. With a rather different hat, I work for the City of London as a conservation officer, and we've been visiting the Basque Country since 2007 with various groups of people to go and see the trees and to work on them, and learning from the local people and from the trees. In 2007, we had arborists with us actually cutting the trees. And in 2025, we went back with another group, including arborists again, to cut some trees, including some of those that we'd first worked on in 2007. So most of them are lapsed beech pollards, but some younger ones as well. The trip turned out to be very much a sort of axe focused visit, and we sort of thought that you might like to share some of our enthusiasm for axes as well. We should have started off with some of the Spanish people actually talking to us first of all. They're having a few problems with connection. So what we're going to do is to move straight on to the City of London presentation, and then we'll hear from the Basques afterwards, hopefully. So from the City of London, starting off, we have Grant Thornhill, who's standing in for Gavin, who's unable to come tonight, who's the ARB manager at Epping Forest. We have Kevin Yearley, who's a ranger from Burner Beaches, then Alistair Nichol, who's a senior ARB from North London Open Spaces, and finally Zuza from Ashtead. And I think I can possibly hear that the Spanish have arrived. So Miguel Murray, if you've arrived, we'll do your presentation after the one from the City of London. So if you hang on for about 20 minutes or so, then we can talk to you or to have your presentation. So hopefully that works. So I'll hand over to Grant then. I think Alistair's going to share his screen, and then we'll be able to.
Try and get the PowerPoint to come up.
Right.
Okay, how's that?
Lovely. I think that's fine. Thanks, Alistair. So as Helen mentioned, my name's Grant Thornhill. I'm the arborist manager here at Epping Forest. Joined Helen and the team to do some work in the Basque Country. So up until then, I knew very, very little about axes, sort of thrown in the deep end, and enjoyed every second of it. So today I'm going to deliver Gavin's presentation. So you'll notice that Gavin is in the photo from the presentation, and he features throughout. He knows a lot more about axes than me, so I apologise to Gavin in advance. But yeah, so today I'm going to be talking about axe types and safety pointers around using axes. I'm going to move on to the next slide, Alistair. Right, so axes are one of the oldest hand tools used by humans, dating back to sort of 2.5 million years, and they were widely used in the UK to denude our landscape of trees quite successfully. So they're used in commercial forestry for clearing land for agriculture, fuel, and all sorts of things. The chainsaw came along in sort of the 1920s, and in the 1950s it sort of advanced and became a tool that sort of superseded axes in many of their roles. There are a lot of axe uses for today. So axes are used in bushcraft for log splitting, green woodworking, as well as sort of niche activities such as hedge laying and coppicing. Also used in carpentry and by firefighters and competitions as well. Next slide, Esther. So talking about axe types, this sort of it's all about the shape and the size of the axe, which determines its use. So there's a lot of specialist axes which are built for a particular purpose. So this might be carving, competitions, ice axes, all sorts. Splitting is a specialist axe, and these have sort of a wedged profile. More general axes have a sort of a beveled tip to them, and it's the general multi-purpose axes that we were using in Spain. The image below shows 3 different sized axes, and as it says, size does matter. So it's all about picking the right tool for the right purpose. There's the larger axe is a 3/4 axe, which is sort of the same length as my arm, and half axe is one that we used. So a half axe can be used with 2 hands or 1 hand, whereas the 3/4 axe is a 2-handed axe. And then there's the hatchet, which is sort of a 1-handed axe. So there's a lot more sort of flexibility with that, with the half axe, which is what we used up in the trees. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk briefly about axe cutting technique. So we watched the experts do it over in Spain. So they've got some competition axes, and they made light work of some very large timber. So the technique was sort of cutting diagonally through the fibres from both sides, and this sort of produced large wedges that were sort of flying out in all directions. When we were using the axes in the tree, it was similar to sort of using a chainsaw, where you create a sort of a face cut in the direction that you want it to fall, and this creates sort of a bit of a micro lean. And then the idea then is to put a higher cut in the back. And when doing this, it's important that you have plenty of space, which I'll discuss in a second. And most important thing is to keep bits small. Don't be too ambitious, because it is hard work, and when you get tired, that's when mistakes can happen. Next slide, please, Alistair. So safety around axes. This is not a lesson in axe safety. I'm not nearly qualified enough to do that, but some things to consider is the tool check. So similar to using a chainsaw and doing your daily checks, it's checking the handle, checking there's no splits in the wood. The wood's really good at absorbing shock, so it's important that's intact. Checking there's no splinters, checking the head of the tool is on properly and secured, there's no cracks in the metal, And then one of the most important things is making sure the tool is sharp. So there's this new term that I have learnt about is the blood bubble. And this is sort of references the area around when you're swinging to make sure that there's no one else near you. So similar to a chainsaw, we have sort of a 5 meter rule when swinging a chainsaw. Another thing is to consider is the arc of swing. So it's important to make sure that the area around you is clear, that you've not got any twigs, branches, things that might change the direction of the axe and cause it to sort of come towards you. The momentum of an axe and the sharpness can cause a significant damage. So always sort of look for professional advice. Another thing to consider is the safe follow through. So this refers to the area that the axe will move as it sort of continues its momentum. If you miss the piece of wood, so quite often it's good to stand with sort of if you're using an axe on the ground with your legs sort of widespread. So if you miss, it's going to swing between your legs, or even getting on your knees as well. So swinging the axe, it will go into the ground rather than swinging towards your shins, knees, anything like that. And one of the most important things is know when it's not safe to use an axe. So quite often there's a more appropriate tool, whether that's a hand saw or a chainsaw. Next, please. So this is a demonstration of quite good axe use. This was one of the Spaniards that came over from the Basque country to do some work in Epping Forest on one of our new pollards. As you can see, the area, a good swing, that arc is clear, and his feet are in a position where they're not going to be hit. So all the lower limbs have been removed, and wouldn't pass modern day health and safety, but at the time, one rope was adequate. And as you can see, 2 hands on the axe at all time avoids any chance of coming in contact with your hands. Next slide, please, Alistair. So final thoughts, what we all came away from the trip is axes are cool. Most importantly, though, be careful. This is not an advert for going out and buying an axe. It's always recommended you seek professional help. Learn to do it on the ground first and choose the right tool for the right job, and don't work outside your skill set. Thank you.
Okay, so I think it's over to me now. Hello, hope everyone can see me. My name's Kevin Yearley. I've been a ranger at Burnham Beeches for 2 years now, and I'm going to talk to you about the scientific considerations and speculations on the potential differing effects on pollarding regrowth when using an axe or chainsaw. So basically opening a discussion as to whether there may be any differences if you cut an axe with, cut a pollard with an axe or a chainsaw. Next slide, please, Ali. So back in 2007, Helen and the team were carrying out research in how lap pollards react to 2 different cutting styles, the Basque style and the UK style. This research led to the creation of a paper in 2013 called Restoration of Lap Speech Pollards. Within this paper, however, there is also an interesting insight into differing results when using a chainsaw or an axe to carry out this work. Next slide. The work took place in the Basque region of northern Spain. This area was chosen due to the large number of pollards and also the local knowledge still remaining in this area. In total, 38 lapsed pollards were worked on, and each of these were recorded in detail before and after the work was completed. And this was in the form of photos and written notes. These notes included the number of branches cut on each tree and the technique used on each branch. Each tree was then re-examined 3 growing seasons later, with the key features being examined being the amount of epicomic growth, the girth at 1.5 meters, the amount of dead bark present, and the general visual response of the tree. Next slide. You can see on this slide the 2 different cutting techniques that were used. You've got the Basque on the right and the UK on the left. The Basque style cutting is more traditional approach to pollarding and concentrates on pruning the centre of the tree hard to the bolling, whilst leaving an almost 2-2 arrangement of smaller branches at the bolling base. This leaves an almost kind of goblet shape to the pollard. The UK cutting style is a more conservative approach, being more comparable to a reduction. Longer stubs are left on the bolling and they're often cut to growth points. As much wispy growth is left as possible to give the tree the best chance of recovery so that it can be cut further and harder in the future. In summary, the Basque style tended to result in better regrowth at the bolling and better represented how true pollards should look. However, the failure rate was a bit higher, and you can see in the slide 18 years apart, and the actual Basque pollard has started to fall apart. The UK style led to less fatalities. However, it didn't really leave a tree that fully resembled a true pollard, and you'd have to go back and recut it in the future. Another finding of this research was stub length. They found that if stubs greater than 550 millimeters were left, they would be seen to have a 50% chance of producing multiple shoots per stub. However, if the stub was 300 millimeters or shorter, it had less than a 50% chance of producing any shoots at all. New slide. When we revisited Lietza last year, each pollard was discussed again in detail to decide on the best cutting technique. Again, some were cut in the Basque style and others in the UK style. However, in this case, some trees were cut with a hybrid method, which was taking the best of both bits, often leaving a tree with more obvious stumps at the bolling, but a more defined tutu around the base. Next slide. Okay, so now on to the axes. I think we're trying to sort of establish here that axes are cool. So out of the 38 lapsed pollards, 9 were cut with an axe, all in the Basque style, and this totaled 57 branches in total being cut by the axe. Each of these trees was climbed by trained arborists. However, this did raise some issues, as not all the arborists had used axes in a tree before. This is something that Alistair will talk to you about later in the webinar, about the challenges and the methods used. One of the most noticeable features you'll see here in the image on the left is the length of the stubs left. This is mainly due to the accessing the branches and having to be able to swing the axe about. Therefore, the cuts couldn't be made as close to the bolling as we'd like. Also influencing the stub lengths is if you leave them a bit longer, the diameters are that a little bit smaller and significantly reduces the effort to cut them. The next most obvious feature you'll see is the rough, uneven cuts left by the axe, especially when you compare them to the relatively smooth, uniform cuts left by the chainsaws. New slide. So in general, the 9 trees were seen to respond well to the cutting, and there were some noticeable differences in the trees cut with axes and those cut with saws. The research showed that axe-cut trees were seen to produce significantly more shoots and clusters of shoots than those cut with a chainsaw. Also, axes seemingly increased the quantity and length of epicormic growth at the bollings. However, as I've mentioned, we were leaving longer stubs. So is this the impact of the tool being used or the influence of the stubs being left? So although this research has proved quite positive, we feel further experimentation is needed. All right, last slide. Okay, so like I said, these are more points for discussion rather than facts, but this is what we're here to sort of get into. So need to start by saying, although this method was used in the past for cutting pollards, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best method going forward. In the past, they had no choice but to use axes and hand saws because they didn't have chainsaws. As mentioned, axe cuts would create more dysfunctional rough edges, better resembling natural breaks within the tree, which we feel these would benefit regrowth within the tree. These rough features would also help retain water, which would be beneficial for regrowth. This is a little bit of a theory of my own, but I don't know how many people out there are familiar with the wassail tradition. Part of that would be to hit the apple trees with a hazel stick. A theory behind this is to then allow or for the tree to grow better the next year, and this is due to the stress caused to the tree. So is it the same with an axe? Repeatedly hitting a tree with an axe rather than a one quick cut with a chainsaw? Is this stressing the tree and maybe encouraging protective growth? So more the downsides of chainsaws, although it's a very quick, swift cut with a chainsaw, you do get micro vibrations, and these have been seen to separate the bark and the cambium layer. There is also some heat produced here. And finally, the chainsaws also have a thin layer of bar oil, which may have an effect, it may not. It's something else to look into. I mean, saying that, chainsaws aren't all bad. You can be more selective in the branches you can cut. You don't have to remove so many additional branches around yourself for access, and they can be quicker. So you could maybe get a few more pollards done in the day. So important for working on lapsed pollards. So that's about it from me. I'll now hand you over to Alistair.
Great, thank you, Kevin. Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Alistair Nichol, and I'm senior arborist at Hampstead Heath, working for the City of London. So this trip was the second time I've been to the Basque Country, but the first time cutting beech in the Basque. I've cut beech quite a lot back at Burnham Beeches. So axes are a big part of the heritage and culture in the Basque Country. So this ties in with the history of charcoal and iron smelting and boat building. But this also applies somewhat to the culture of pollarding. So there are thousands of lapsed pollards around the Basque Country and Navarra, and some of them are still in cycle as well. So you see people still using them occasionally for firewood and fodder and things like that. However, most of them are lapsed. What this does constitute is a massive ecological resource. It's a veritable treasure trove of habitat. So the fact that the pollards in the Basque are predominantly lapsed crosses over quite nicely with pollard restoration work that's gone on in the UK. So whilst in the Basque Country, there's still this living heritage of cutting pollards, and the pollards are only sort of 50 odd years lapsed. In the UK, we've got very lapsed pollards. However, having lost the knowledge of how to do pollards, we have established the knowledge of restoration. So that old knowledge and crossing over the new knowledge marries together quite well. So what's all the interest in axes? Well, Kevin's talked about that a little bit. There is this study from Helen, which showed there may be some benefit to using axes, and also it's a traditional tool. So there's some speculations that axes might be beneficial, and as has already been covered a few times, axes are cool. So as Helen said, we went to visit an axe factory on one day when it was a bit rainy, and people became very inspired by this, and we bought a load of axes between us, various sizes, some light pollarding axes, some slightly heavier. So Gabriel, who you are going to hear from in a little while, gave us a brief introductory lesson in using axes, and then we kind of unleashed ourselves upon some of the pollards that we were going to be working on. So this video is one of the Basque arborists named Amets, and he's doing quite a busy pollard here, and this illustrates quite well one of the restrictions that I found using axes in pollards is when you've got quite a busy crown, it's really quite hard to swing your axe around. Grant covered a little bit the importance of safety when in the tree. So as somebody who's really experienced cutting and climbing with chainsaws and silky saws, you get into a certain type of positioning. However, if you're using an axe, that doesn't really work, because you need to make sure that you are well out of the way, and also your ropes are out of the way. So this was a big kind of lesson for us as we were playing around with pollarding. So other things that I learnt as somebody who's new to using axes in trees is a very different way of working. Firstly, I found out that the best way probably to work, especially when you're working on these wide spreading pollards, is to start on the outside, and then, because you need to fell significant chunks out, you need to be a little bit careful where those chunks are going. So you're starting on the outside of the canopy, and you're doing your cuts. Because axes produce longer stubs, what I found was happening is, as I was working my way inside the crown, the stubs were getting longer and longer. So that was something I think we need to refine slightly. It is a tight space to work in, so that was a challenge. And undercuts I found were really difficult, because it's easy enough using an axe on the ground because you can get in the right position, but when you're having to work around arboricultural work position techniques as well and getting undercuts in, that was really difficult. And so it's quite an art really to end up getting decent cuts. The other thing is, because it's harder work doing felling cuts with an axe, and it's much slower, I was finding that felling whole sections out is the way to go. So you do need to make sure you're not damaging anything as the lumps are falling out. My reflection really is, as a beginner using an axe to cut pollards, I think as a tool to make small cuts, I think it's really good. It's much harder work with doing bigger pieces, so you definitely you need a bit of practice, but as a method going forward, I think it's something worth exploring. This wasn't a methodical study, so we would need to study it a bit further, and that is something Susa's going to discuss with you now.
Thank you, Ali. Hi everyone, I'm Susa Featherstone, and in one sentence, I look after ancient pollarded oaks on Ashted Common. I sadly don't have a really nice photo in the tree. I'm the ground creature. I support from the ground. Next slide, please. So it is widely known, and it has been mentioned on a few occasions during this webinar, that in the UK, due to socio-economical changes, traditional pollarding practices largely faded out over a century ago. With that loss, much of the knowledge, connection, and folklore surrounding the trees has quietly slipped away across the generations. This is why spending time with people who still carry memories, stories, and practical experience of pollarding feels so valuable, and being able to draw on their lived wisdom and tap into the knowledge, both practical and theoretical. It's not only educational, but genuinely eye-opening and really inspiring. I have been fortunate to watch professional hedge layers harvesting binders and stakes from hazel at Ashted Common, and watching them to use bill hooks was striking. Not only they were very efficient, but the work was notably quieter and more in tune with the landscape than chainsaw use. And similarly, in a Basque country, watching those who use axes from a young age and still pollarding, it is truly mesmerizing. They are very fast and very efficient. And that sound of axe resonating through wood pasture landscape, it provided much more quintessential, organic, and innate experience. So now that we have collectively agreed that axes have certain charm, and in real terms, axes are cool, my analytical mind naturally began to wonder how we might look a bit more scientifically and as how to assess using an axe comparing with chainsaw or a handsaw. And while in the UK, we may be hesitant to take up axes and apply traditional Basque pollarding techniques on our ancient pollards, the chance to observe those methods and perhaps inspire arborists to revisit older practices feels meaningful. Let's be honest, I would not dare to apply practices when managing old pollards. The whole village would seek revenge. However, looking at how young pollards respond to different cutting tools seems like a good opportunity to expand portfolio of techniques available in creation of the next generation of pollarded trees. Studies on regrow and shoot production after pollarding that I came across have produced slightly inconclusive results, which encouraged me to start looking more closely at details such as stub lengths, the amount of timber left on the tree, and the broader question of whether axes might offer benefits over chainsaws in conservation work. The project will take years, if not decades, to provide enough data to indicate if tree response differ to cutting by applying different techniques. Although much of the existing research focuses on coppice practices rather than pollarding and compares stool response after mechanical harvesting versus chainsaw cutting, I have yet to find a study examining how young pollards respond to 3 different techniques: chainsaw, handsaw, and the axe. And while bill hooks were once widely used for gathering woody materials, I am in process of searching for historical records of their use specifically in pollarding. So alongside the physical evidence of tree response and recovery, I'm also interested in exploring internal factors such as carbohydrate storage and the nitrogen and carbon storage within a tree, which may offer further insight into how trees respond to different cutting methods. Additionally, those of us who use chainsaws know about vibration of the machine. And as operators, we are protected from that by inbuilt protection, but the branches are not. And therefore, assessing the damage to the wood cells themselves by different tools could be an explanation for dieback or for the response to the pollarding. And to wrap it up, because I know you're all dying to hear a little bit more from the Spanish crew and then start asking questions, I'll just wrap it quickly up. Very often, those mad ideas to investigate further are born from curiosity of the mind. And I now have an opportunity, thanks to my colleagues, to explore if traditional tools are better than the new ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Zuza, and everybody. What we're going to try and do now is see if Miguel Murray can share his screen while I'm doing a bit of an introduction. And if that fails, we've got a backup. So I don't know. So what we're hoping to do is to hear from Miguel Murray Osegi, who is a forester and biologist for the Navarra government. And with him is Gabriel Saralegui, who is a traditional axe cutter and trainer of people who are the sort of athletes in the competitions for the in the Basque Country. So I think can you try and share your screens? And if that fails, Bob will share his screen and show the pictures while you talk, and we will unmute you, hopefully. So just bear with us.
Hello, good night.
Yeah, okay, we can hear you. That's great.
Good. Good night.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. We will try to share our photographs, okay?
Okay, perfect.
We have Ainara here.
A technical help.
Yeah.
Good. If not, we can share from one of our screens and
Yeah, better.
You
If
can,
you can use.
we can share it. Okay.
Thank you.
So, Bob, are you able to share your screen with the presentation? Yeah, looks like it's coming.
Good. Thank you very much. Well, we're speaking from Navarra. We are in the Basque area. Basque is an old culture, living in the Pyrenees, in the western, at both sides. Can you go on? And the axe is a tool.
So next slide, Bob.
Yeah. The axe is very useful for us. For pollarding, traditionally, but not now, many. But for example, the foresters use the axe to mark the trees to cut, okay? It's a special axe with a stamp in behind the head, okay? So if you want to cut a tree, like this one, you make a cut in the bottom, and with the axe you hit the tree with the stamp, okay? You must cut the tree above that mark. So, as you see in the right, the tree is cut, but the stamp remains there, and you can control it. You can know if it's legal or not, okay? That's the way we use all the trees need a mark, okay, with an axe. For example, next one, please. Well, traditional pollarding nearly is dead in the Basque Country. We pollard ash trees to feed animals, but it's 50 or 60 years we are not pollarding Quercus robur or Fagus sylvatica, okay, beech and oaks. We began again after Helen and her team's visit, okay? We began here in Leitza, and there are few more places where they are still pollarding with a traditional way, okay? What happened? Foresters use the axe, and the old traditional jobs became sports, okay? Two groups pollarding with the axe, and one telling to the other, I'm better than your group. I can do it faster. No. I'm better than you. So they go to the square, and there's people, and that's the sport, okay? That's the way it became a sport. Next one, please. This is a traditional way repollarding in Leitza after Helen's and her team's visits. The old people, Jose Miguel Elosegui and Miguel Barriola, guiding where to cut, how to cut, because these trees had been pollarded by Miguel Barriola and Pachi Barriola, the two cousins, okay? They were the persons who had pollarded these trees 50, 60 years before, okay? And they told us how to do it in the same way. Well, the problem was the branches were bigger, much bigger than 50 years before, okay? The normal cutting was every 15 or 20 years. Now it's 50, 60 years. So it's much bigger trees, much bigger branches, okay? Next one, please. So we had the culture alive. People who knew how to pollard, for example, and many people training to cut with the axe in championships and so on. When we have a fallen tree in the forest, as you see in the right, up right, there is a man or a woman with an axe training there, okay? And they use that tree. Well, sometimes it's legal, sometimes it's not legal. You should pay because normally the tree belongs to the council, to the town council. You have to ask for it. You should pay something. It's not many, but some euros, and you can train with that tree. Okay, that's legal. But we have the culture of using the axe in the square alive. There are some schools I'm going to ask to Gabriel how many schools we have. Zenbat eskola zeuzkagu? Hamar. Euskal Herrian. Gutxio. Sei. We have 5 or 6 schools in the Basque Country. Some years ago, we had more schools to train the people to be choppers or to cut with the axe in the square. For us, an axe is an axe. This is an axe. There are many axe different lengths, different handles, longer. It depends on what do you need. You need a longer or a shorter handle and so on. Gabriel is a trainer for the sportmen, and they use different axes depending on how big is the tree you are going to cut, okay? Carry on, please. Next photos, please. Well, Gabriel pollarding over a tree. We have a very similar sport in the square. You see in the middle. That guy with the axe must to make a small hole to put a put of wood like stair, okay? And he's like a step, first step, second one, third one, and he cuts the tree, okay? It's not very normal, but well, sometimes you can see that. And the one in the right is cutting in vertical cut, okay? Most of the times we cut in horizontal way. That's the typical way, but in vertical also we cut with the axe. Next one, please. Well, this is Leitza, our town, and every year we have sometimes the shows with the axe. Years ago, it was a very big fiesta. It was normal to have 5,000 people in Tolosa or 70,000 people one day. No, in Donosti, in San Sebastian, 17,000. Okay, it was 50 years ago. It was the national sport. Okay, in many areas in the Basque Country. Now you can have 1,000 people or 2,000 people in a big festival with the axes. Okay, well, it's going down. Now we have football. Okay, pilota we call handball, and yeah, you can have 3,000 people, but with the axe, no, it's a minority sport. In the bottom, you see some guys. We have 100 guys, men and women, cutting with the axe officially in the federation. Okay, we have it's a federación, it's a federation. It's yeah. You need a jueza, license. You need judge. Yeah, you understand, to control it. So yeah, it's organization to have organized sport. Okay, next one, please. There has been a revolution in the last generation. Women used to stay at home looking for the child and in the kitchen, but Anita Yerdi and Saralegui sisters, Gabriel sisters, began in the square to cut with an axe, okay? And now there are 15 or 20 doing it, officially with championships and so on, okay? Women. So we have 80 or so men, 20 or so women in all the Basque land, okay? Anita Yerdi in the left with all escolaris, we call, axemen. In the middle, Gabriel.
Malen Barrenetxea.
Gabriel with Malen Barrenetxea is a young axe woman. And in the right, cutting in the square. So it's something which is growing. We don't know if will be grow very much or not, but well, it's new. Next one, please. Well, an axe is a very interesting tool, but you need a culture to know how to use it, okay? How to put it sharp. If you have a championship, you need your tool in a perfect point, and it needs time. Se demora. Ongi zorrozten. Txapelketa baten. 2 hours to put it in the point, to sharp it, okay? So this is the axe in the Basque Country. We hope we will have a future. You see in the right, a young boy with an axe, okay? There are some of them coming, but a few. We have hundreds of boys learning how to be a footballer, okay? Football and basketball and so on. But we have a very few with the axe, but still we have some. So Gabriel and we will try to help them to have a future with this tool, okay? And sorry, our English is not the best, but it's the best of this group. So thank you and good luck.
Thank you very much. That was great. We have time for a few questions. So if anybody has any questions, if you'd like to just pop them in the chat, and we'll see if we can direct them to the right person. I think it's really great that the numbers may be going down of your competition axe people in the Basque Country, but I think it's really great to see some women. Perhaps they'll bolster the numbers a little bit for you and keep the tradition alive. So have we got any other questions? Yes, one comment just pointing out that English is the third language for Miguel Mari and Gabriel Zagrelegi. So we have the axe competition seem to focus on speed, but does this miss any important refinements of technique when applying to the pollards? Differences in axe type, difference in technique, stamina and duration versus speed, differences in the finished cut. So I think there's a question maybe for Miguel Mari and Gabriel with the cutting in the competitions. They take quite a long time to cut through one of the large logs, which is obviously requires quite a lot of stamina.
Well, normally Basque people use the axe in competition for a long time. It's 30 or 40 minutes time, normal. Sometimes are longer. Well, once there was a championship of 5 hours cutting with the axe, okay? So it's a marathon, but normally it's 45 minutes or so, okay? The technique is very, very important. Sometimes there are different ways of cutting, and there is one in a championship which
counts the times
how many how many hits to cut a stump, okay? How many hits? Which is the best one? The one who does it in less number of hits, okay? So the technique is very important. Well, Basques are not the only people in the world using the axe. Australians, Canadians, Russians use the axe also, and they have competitions. In Australia, normally they are sprinters. They use the axe for 1, 2, 3 minutes. That's all, finished. 2 minutes, sprint, finished. Basque are marathon. You need 45 minutes, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's very important the weight you give to the cut. If you put a very narrow cut,
It closes. You can't. It
you
doesn't
must,
break.
yeah, you must do it in an open hit, okay? Open cut. That's the trainers.
Could I just ask?
Yeah.
I was just going to say, could we ask Gabriel? He was cutting some of the branches on the pollard
Right.
in 2007. Was it very different standing in a tree cutting from when he does the competition work?
Bai, arbolatik haitza, kanpenatuan haitza lurretik, diferente da.
Ikaragarri.
Yeah, it's very different, yeah.
Right.
Equilibrium.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
If you need your strength, you need your feet in the floor in a good way, okay? So you can use all your strength. When you're in a tree, you are using some of your strength in maintaining the equilibrium, okay? So you are not using all your strength. It's more difficult, much more difficult. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We've had one question which says, I'm Basque and I'd like to learn how to do it. Where can I go and how can I learn? So I'm going to suggest possibly that he sends an email. If you send an email to the Ancient Tree Forum, we can pass that on.
Yeah. Well, Gabriel
put
says
you in contact. So it looks like you have one recruit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think you have a willing participant. So that's great. One other question, what can we learn from the Basque Country when it comes to encouraging the revival of pollard management in the UK? I think that's a really good question, and I'm not quite sure who to direct that to. Can I pass that to Ali? Alistair Nicol, would you like to, is there anything that you can think?
I mean, yeah, my thinking is from having gone a couple of times now and done a little bit of pollarding there and done some restoration work in the UK. And having talked to some of the Basque arborists and also Spanish arborists, because there's other places that pollarding is still a living tradition. I think the most useful thing that we can learn is from speaking to people who are still starting off and maintaining and having pollards in cycle, which I think generally we've kind of lost that knowledge here. So I had a conversation with Juan about pollarding, and he was commenting, we were just taking the top off a new tree, and he thought that might be problematic because where he's from, they select a few mother branches. So they have this established method of starting pollards that they know since like Neolithic times, they say that that's what works. Whereas in the UK, we've kind of lost that knowledge. We're basically just lopping the tops off of things and seeing what works. So that knowledge, I feel, is useful on sites like Burnham Beach and Epping Forest, where they're looking to start pollards. And also, if you were trying to do this in just an agricultural landscape, that ancient knowledge that is known to work, I think, although it's from a different location, I think it's worth trying that sort of stuff out because it's worked for a very long time.
Thank you. I've got several interesting questions coming in. Actually, we might not have time for all of them, but another one for Miguel Mari and Gabriel. Looking at Flemish and Dutch late medieval art, which show pollards, the stumps often seem quite clean, smooth, and close to the bolling. That's close to the trunk of the tree. Is this something you can achieve with skill on the pollards? Or have the pollards always in the Basque Country been cut with quite long stubs on them, like some of the pictures that we've shown? Does that make sense? So.
Well, the traditional way was to cut at 3 meters high, 2.5, 3.5, and the branches were very short there, okay? Go to the head and cut the branches. When we began repollarding after Helen's visits, we began with the traditional system, okay? Because Miguel Barriola told us to do the traditional way. We did it. but we realized it was a very good idea to leave some branches and leave longer branches. We have seen it. We have done 100 trees in 20 years. That's not a lot, but we take more and more care, and we try to leave more branches as much as we can. And we see if we pollard in an English style and we go up in the tree, the response is good and the tree is going to survive. But the head is at 3 meters. So the English have to go up. It's very difficult. And years later, we have to do it again. If you do it once at 3 meter high, finished. It's done for 15 years or 20 years. So the Basque traditional style is good when you have small branches, okay? Not too big branches, 30 this side, 25, 30, 40 is maximum centimeter. More than 40, I think, is too heavy cut for the tree. So the traditional way, we began with it, but more and more we leave longer branches, and we go to the head and we leave half a meter, 1 meter high. Many times we leave a branch going in one side, okay? So it's something ensures it will go well. That's the idea.
Thank you. And one very quick follow-up. Is there any Basque tradition of using hand saws when pollarding trees, or were they all cut with axes?
Well, not very normal. We use the axe, okay? Yes. Well, pollarding, not. We didn't use the saw. I have seen using it. I use it in malus, in apples and pears. When you use for fruit trees, you use the hand saw, okay? For fruit trees, yeah. But for oaks and beech trees, we use the axe.
Lovely, thank you. We're pretty much spot on 8 o'clock. I'm going to pass over to Richard to sum up for us.
Thanks, Helen. Thanks, Helen. I think some of the speakers might stay on for 5 or 6 minutes afterwards, or for 10 minutes afterwards, if you want, so we could try and go through some more questions. But I know some people have to leave dead on 8, so we'll close the seminar now, but we will hold some of the questions and stay online for a few minutes more. But thanks ever so much for all our speakers, and thanks enormously to our Basque colleagues for coming in and speaking in their third language. Thank you so much for that insight. We appreciate it enormously. Thank you. Our next webinar is in April. It will be with Luke Barley, who's the tree and woodland specialist for the National Trust, and who's just written a book. And Luke will be talking to us about not only managing trees within the National Trust, but also his personal interest in trees. So that will be the next webinar in April. Details will follow up with this email after this meeting. Look out for your local ATF group meetings. I've done 2 this year already, and they are stunning. We've seen some amazing trees. So if you want to go out with some real experts and have some amazing discussions with people that really know what they are doing with not only the trees but the biodiversity and the fungi and the association with the trees, it's wonderful. So do look out for our local group field meetings. There are several going to be out through the through the summer. There's still places available on the 2026 ATF training courses. So if you need training, get in touch, because we have some places. The summer forum that we're going to do this year is going to be in Motherwell in Scotland on the 4th and 5th of June. day of talking and a day in the field, and looking at different oaks and the Scottish concept of trees. So if you fancy that, do book online. You can find that on our website. And subscribe to our newsletter through the ATF website. Our website is really the go-to place. You can find all the things that we're doing, and hopefully you'll learn more about us. So thanks ever so much for your for coming in tonight. Thank you very much for your donations and help and support that you give the ATF. And we'll see you at the next one in April. But if you wanted to listen to a couple of more questions and a couple of more discussions, stay online. But if you have to leave, we'll see you at the next one. Thanks ever so much. Thank you. You're on mute, Helen.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay.
We have a few more questions which we can address. Hopefully, there's still a few people around to answer them. Anthony's asked, "Is there any PPE for axing, especially for legs?" And interesting that I do remember noticing when we were watching people training for the competition axe work that they were wearing some leg protections. And he said, yes, do we need titanium chainmail? What's the injury rate compared to chainsaws or likely still silky stools? I don't know who would like to have a go at answering that one. Miguel Murray, with the competition axe, I've seen them with, they have some protection for their legs.
Yes. Not very common, but when they are learning, they use some socks made by iron.
Chainmail.
Yeah.
Chainmail. Yeah.
Sorry,
and in some championships, you can see it. Yeah. They use, and they are very useful, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. I don't know whether any of the UK people know whether we've got any special PPE for axing or whether you're just wearing your chainsaw gear.
We're just being careful, and chainsaw trousers. I mean, you can get like butcher's protective stuff, but I guess we're not using it enough to look at that at the moment.
Yeah. And another one for possibly Alistair or Grant, which tree species do you find the most difficult to cut? I guess it's similar cutting with an axe to a chainsaw, or maybe it isn't. Maybe there's differences.
I've only really cut beech, so couldn't comment. Other than beech is hard as long as the axe is sharp.
Right, another one from Miguel Murray and Gabrielle. In some places in the UK, we have coppards, so they're like a low pollard. So, and Jack says he's seen 100-year-old examples on Exmoor. Is there anything similar in the Basque Country? So that's a tree that's sort of between a pollard and a coppice with a very sort of low stem. Possibly willows, I could think in some areas might have a very low stem like that.
I would say no. We have to go 3 meters high because we have traditionally many animals in the mountains, many cows, horses, sheep, and horse can reach up to 2 meters, 2.5 meters. So it was necessary to go up to the tree 3 meters high. So the new branches were not eaten by the animals, okay? If you do it at 1 meter or 1.5, a cow or a horse can eat it. If you have goats climb to the trees and they eat. So you should go to 3 meters. Yeah.
I guess that comes down to why you're pollarding or what animals you've got grazing as to where you need to cut the trees.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
And another one for you. Sorry, lots of questions about the Basque culture. This one is that the sports are very sympathetic to traditional skills. Are they well written down? Do you have videos and audio records of people using axes?
Bai.
Ese es
Keep the quack.
Yeah. Yes. I have to ask to Gabriel, noiz zintzuten munduko txapelketa? Irabazizuna, bueno, Euskalduna bigarren da, hoi da, Astibia eta hori
hori...
Atxe horuen,
bai, 66 da.
In 1966, there was a world championship with the axe made in the Basque Country, and the winner was Australia.
Australia.
First one. And the second year, next year, did again a national world championship with the axe, and the winner was Basque Country. Australians had very useful handles with this. This is very useful to put your strength, okay? And Basque traditional handle was worse than Australian one, okay? So first year Basque learned how to do it, and second year with a good handle, they were the winner. You can see those videos and so on. I don't know if older... Hoy baino zarragoa bideo que tengo yo. La tasa, 1950, yeah, you can find in... I don't know where, but there are championship in the archives.
Yeah.
In the archives, yeah. There should be, yeah.
Okay.
Not pollarding, but in the square, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And another one which will make you smile is the cycle of the moon important to the timing of pollarding.
Well, when we began pollarding, we began because English people told us it was good to try again. And we spoke with our old people, and they told the first one we should look up and see how was the moon, okay? We did it in the similar system, okay? Same way. They use the moon, we use the moon. We have spoken with Helen and her team many times, and we know they don't trust too much in the moon, and they have made different experiments, and they don't see very clearly, okay? We have done it always in a traditional way, looking to the moon. Moon going up, the beech tree going down with the oak trees. But we have done 1 or 2 or 3 trees with the wrong moon, okay? And we have one of them dead, but we need more time to see it, okay? I think if it's very important here, it should be very important in UK. So it's surprising for me, but well, we are going to cut a small number of trees, and we will try to do it in a traditional way, if we can, okay?
Thank you. I think we've really lost that tradition in the UK. It's some of those, that sort of knowledge of how to cut and the different moon phases has really gone from the UK. So perhaps we can rediscover it from the Basque Country. I think I'll do just one more, which is for Alistair and Grant. How big a branch can be cut in order to give the tree the opportunity to cure the wound? I think we have an old pollarded chestnuts, but they're so big, my fear is that we will kill the tree due to heart rot if I do it. Don't know whether you can address that one.
I mean, that's very difficult, isn't it? It depends where you are. So, yeah, I don't know if I can give a sensible answer. I mean, in the UK, when we're cutting ancient pollards, we try and make as small a cut as possible because we know with the trees that we're working on, if we make large cuts, then generally, if we don't kill the trees, then you get a lot of dysfunction, and that's not generally what we want to create. In the Basque area, the trees there seem to take cutting much better, and you know, they can get away with quite big cuts. So yeah, I'm sorry, I can't really be much more precise than that, but it's rather dependent on species and location.
Thank you. I've just spotted another couple at the bottom. So there's one that I will. Was there a technique whereby you take just 1 or 2 of the regrowth stems and leave the rest to grow, but still on a 15 to 20-year rotation? I've seen something very similar in Austria, where they were cutting the trees actually every year. They were ash trees and they were cutting them every year, but cutting the larger branches, the sort of 2-year-old branches each time, and leaving the smaller ones to grow on. So that definitely is a traditional way of cutting in some parts of the world. And it's something that I'm actually doing on a small black poplar in our garden here as well, and it seems to work quite well. And then just one final question: are there any places in the UK that are revisiting the various methods of pollarding, or any ancient pollards worth visiting? And I think we could probably safely say that there's some lovely ancient pollards worth visiting at Epping Forest and Burnham Beeches. The city actually seems to own a huge population of pollards, and we are on those sites trying to create some new pollards for the future, and also trying to work on some of the lapsed pollards as well. So I think that we'll probably there's 1 or 2 other comments, but I think no more comments than questions. So I don't know whether, Richard, did you want to say anything else, or shall we just close the meeting now?
Thanks again to everybody, and thanks for staying on and giving more answers. There's always more questions than there is time, so no, much appreciated that you're able to give your time for us. So thank you very much. Thank you.
And I've just been reminded, don't forget Ashted Common, which I did for oak pollards, and also Hatfield.
Yes, Hatfield, yeah.
So plenty of other places to go and visit pollards. Lovely. Thank you all very much, and hope to see you when we have Luke's webinar in a few weeks' time.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.